Usually when you pick up an instruction manual today, you expect clean diagrams, maybe some minimalist bullet points, and just a completely sterile, bloodless process.
Right, yeah, like IKEA instructions or something.
Exactly. You certainly do not expect a visceral, overwhelming butcher's guide that somehow doubles as a profound blueprint for divine connection. But as we step into this ancient, intensely physical world today, I actually just want to pause and extend a sincere divine blessing over your day and your entire week ahead.
Absolutely.
Finding peace and clarity in our modern chaos, it often requires looking back, looking at how people thousands of years ago sought that exact same peace. And that is exactly what we are unpacking for you today.
It is, and it's a heavy one, but it's fascinating.
Yeah, we are taking a deep dive into some extensive study notes, specifically from the Holman and Nebue study Bibles, to break down the very first chapter of the book of Leviticus.
Which, I mean, is a book a lot of people just skip right over.
Oh, totally. It's dense. But our mission today is to strip away that archaic language and really look at what it literally costs to connect with the divine. We're talking about the heavy psychological weight of forgiveness and how these ancient rules were surprisingly designed to accommodate absolutely everyone.
Yeah, regardless of their financial status, which is something you really don't expect from an ancient text.
Right.
Because exploring this text, it really forces us to look at the physical reality of abstract concepts. Like, we throw around words like guilt, grace, dedication all the time in our modern conversation.
Oh, yeah, they're just buzzwords now.
Exactly. But Leviticus demands that we ground those ideas in flesh, blood, and actual economic sacrifice. And to really grasp this, we have to look at the incredibly specific environment where these instructions were first delivered.
Right, the setting is crucial here.
It is. So the sources place us at the tent of meeting, or the tabernacle. And this was a provisional, movable structure erected under Moses' supervision at Mount Sinai. But the detail that really stands out most in the study notes is the timeline.
The timeline is wild.
It's unbelievable. This entire massively complex system of rituals and social structures was implemented roughly 48 days after the Sinai structure was built.
Wait, 48 days?
Yeah.
Setting up a comprehensive legal and religious framework for an entire society in under 2 months that is a frantic pace.
Right. It's basically an overnight implementation.
You are looking at a nomadic group of people who literally just finished building a massive tent in the middle of a desert, and almost immediately they are handed this intricate system.
And it is intricate. The study Bibles categorize 5 major biblical offerings that emerged from this period. You've got the burnt offering, the grain offering, the peace offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering.
But Leviticus 1 focuses entirely on just the first one, right? The burnt offering.
Yeah, chapter 1 is all about the burnt offering.
And traditionally, as the sources note, this offering has been referred to by a term that carries a pretty horrific historical weight for us today: the Holocaust.
Yeah, that word jolts you when you read it in a study Bible.
It really does. And I want to address that head on for you listening, because the ancient meaning is entirely divorced from our modern usage of that word. The text notes that the English word actually traces back to a Greek translation of the original Hebrew word, which is olah.
Olah.
Right. And olah simply and literally translates to an ascending.
An ascending. And the focus of that ascending is specifically the smoke going up to God. It's a vertical movement. And this brings us to a major insight from the sources regarding the Olah. This was the most expensive offering a person could possibly make within this ancient system.
More expensive than all the others.
Oh, by far.
Yeah.
Because in most other sacrifices detailed later in the text, portions of the animal's meat were kept. Like they provided food for the priests, or they were shared in a communal meal by the family who brought the offering.
So it was like a religious barbecue. You still got to eat.
Right, exactly. You still got some material benefit from it. But
Yeah.
the burnt offering is unique because the animal was completely 100% consumed by the fire on the altar. Yeah. The only thing spared was the skin. Absolutely none of the meat was salvaged for human consumption.
So every single ounce of that animal's value is just reduced to ash.
Literally up in smoke.
That represents a total economic loss for the person standing at the altar. I mean, nobody in an agrarian society just burns their wealth without a profound reason.
No, you'd have to be deeply committed to do that.
Exactly. And understanding that total consumption leads directly into the underlying purpose of this ritual. It represents the undivided dedication of the person to God.
Right.
You aren't, holding a prime cut of meat back for your own dinner. You are giving everything.
Yeah.
And the motivation behind wanting to show that level of dedication, well, it comes down to the mechanics of access.
Yeah, and the Hebrew text uses a very specific word to describe this axis, which the sources highlight. The word is korav,
Korov.
and it's used 102 times in the book of Leviticus alone.
102 times.
Yeah, which really signals that it's the central theme of the entire text. Now, English translations usually render it simply as to offer, but the literal physical translation of korav is to approach or to draw near.
Oh, I like that. To draw near.
Yeah, the text is communicating that you could not just, casually wander into the holiness of the tent of meeting empty-handed. The physical act of bringing this offering was the tangible mechanism, like the vehicle, for getting close to the divine.
And that vehicle had uncompromising quality controls.
Oh, strictly enforced.
Right. If a person was bringing a herd animal, the text specifies it had to be a male without blemish. Now, to translate that ancient agrarian wealth into modern terms, we have to look beyond just the price tag.
It's not just buying an expensive gift.
No, giving up a pristine male animal wasn't like taking a sledgehammer to a luxury watch just to prove you have money to burn. In an agricultural society, a flawless male bull is your infrastructure.
It really is.
It is your tractor. It is your breeding stock that guarantees your herd's survival next year. And it is your family's savings account all rolled into one.
Yeah, giving that up is like handing over the deed to your most profitable business asset. The sheer financial terror of watching your livelihood walk toward the altar, it proves the earnestness of your desire to draw near.
It's such a heavy cost.
It is, and the economic cost is inextricably linked to the psychological weight of the ritual. The sources detail a deeply intimate moment in this process that heightens that psychological impact. Before the animal is slaughtered, the offerer must step forward and perform the imposition of hands.
Okay, what does that look like?
Well, they physically place their hand heavily onto the head of the animal, and the study notes clarify that this is not a gentle, casual touch, like you're not just petting
You're
it.
not soothing the animal.
No, you are pressing down. It is a profound legal and symbolic transfer. By pressing their hand onto the unblemished animal, the offerer identifies with the victim. They are actively, consciously transferring their own guilt, their flaws, and their burdens onto this perfect creature.
Wow. Looking a highly valuable living creature in the eye, physically touching it, and internalizing the fact that it is taking your place to restore your relationship with the divine, that is a staggering emotional reality.
It's intense. And the text describes the result of this transfer using two pretty heavy theological concepts: expiation and propitiation.
Okay, those are definite textbook words.
They are, yeah. But to bring those terms down to earth, think of expiation, which is kapper in Hebrew, as paying off a massive crippling debt.
Okay.
It removes the structural barrier, the obstacle of sin, that separates humanity from God. Propitiation, on the other hand, is the emotional aftermath.
So if expiation is paying the debt, what's propitiation?
It's like embracing a family member after a bitter, years-long feud. It appeases the divine displeasure and restores the warmth of the relationship.
Oh, I love that. The NWA study notes actually frame that distinction beautifully. They say expiation cleans the slate, while propitiation heals the bond.
Exactly. Clean slate, healed bond.
The offerer could walk away from the altar experiencing both the structural relief of a canceled debt and the relational relief of a restored friendship.
But to achieve that dual relief, they had to participate in an intensely visceral sensory process. The text details the slaughtering of the animal right at the entrance of the tabernacle. Following that, the priests, Aaron's sons, collect the blood.
This is where it gets really graphic.
Very. And the specific instruction is that they must sprinkle this blood around the altar and not throw it into the fire with the meat.
Around the altar.
Yeah.
Right. And the sources explain that distinction hinges on what blood represents in this ancient worldview. Blood is the literal essence of life, and life belongs exclusively to God.
Right, it's not yours to burn.
Exactly. Keeping the blood separate from the burning meat and reverently sprinkling it around the altar signifies returning that life force to its rightful owner. Beyond the blood, the preparation of the meat itself is incredibly meticulous. The entrails and the legs had to be washed with water before they were placed on the fire.
Because you couldn't offer the divine something contaminated with dirt or waste. It had to be purified.
But this raises a fascinating paradox in the text for me. This incredibly bloody, gutted, and washed animal is placed on an open fire. And the text repeatedly describes this as a pleasing aroma or a soothing aroma to the Lord.
Yeah, which sounds kind of bizarre to us.
Right. Now, anyone who has ever smelled burning hair or burning bone knows that it is objectively terrible. It is an acrid, choking scent. How does a burning carcass become a soothing aroma?
Well, reading ancient symbolic language literally often leads to that exact confusion.
Yeah.
The Holman notes provide a crucial insight here, explaining that soothing aroma is not describing olfactory pleasure. Like, God doesn't just love the smell of barbecue.
Right. It's not about the physical scent.
No, it is a specific theological idiom denoting God's acceptance and grace. The notes suggest a deeper conceptual root for this phrase. The metaphor operates on the contrast you just pointed out. The fundamental idea is that the metaphorical sweet smell of a human being's obedience, their dedication, and desire to draw near completely disguises or overpowers the terrible, ugly odor of the burning carcass.
Wow. That reframes the entire ritual.
It really does.
The divine isn't enjoying the physical stench of a barbecue. The divine is acknowledging the posture of the human heart. The willingness of the person to sacrifice their livelihood and seek restoration is so beautiful that it acts as grace. It completely covers the ugly, messy, malodorous reality of human failing.
The physical stench is undeniable, but the spiritual reality of the restored relationship is what actually smells sweet.
That's incredible.
But, taking all of this into account, the sheer value of the hurt animal and the elaborate nature of the ritual, we encounter a pretty serious societal question.
The cost.
Right. If drawing near to God, achieving that expiation and propitiation, requires sacrificing a pristine, highly valuable bull, it creates an inherently elitist system.
It totally does.
Yeah.
It suggests that divine access is a luxury good reserved only for the wealthy landowners.
Yeah, what about everyone else?
And this is where the text introduces a brilliant, built-in economic accommodation. If the cost of admission is a bull, you immediately price out, 90% of the population?
Easily.
But Leviticus 1 creates a sliding scale of access. The chapter begins with the instructions for herd animals, which represent the apex of wealth. Then, it explicitly moves down the economic ladder.
Right, it doesn't stop with the rich.
No. The instructions pivot, stating that if a person cannot afford a bull from the herd, they are permitted to bring a male sheep or a goat from the flock. It is still a significant loss of value, but flock animals are far more common and accessible to the middle class of that era.
And the text doesn't stop there either. It anticipates the needs of the absolute poorest members of the society.
Which is so rare for ancient texts.
It really is. If a sheep or a goat is still too much of a financial burden, the text moves down the ladder again to birds, specifically turtle doves or pigeons.
Pigeons. Wow.
Yeah. The study Bibles emphasize that these birds were abundant, they were easily domesticated, and they required virtually no land or resources to keep. They were the universal offering of the poor.
So nobody was left out.
Exactly. This sliding scale guaranteed that absolutely no one, regardless of how little they had to their name, was economically priced out of drawing near to God.
To give that sliding scale some historical context for you listening, the sources point out an incredible connection to the New Testament narrative.
Oh, this part is fascinating.
Centuries after these laws were established, when Mary, the mother of Jesus, traveled to the temple for her purification following his birth, the Gospel of Luke documents that she offered a pair of birds.
Birds. Not a lamb, not a bull.
Right. That single detail instantly places Mary and Joseph firmly on the lowest rungs of the economic ladder. They were relying directly on the provision for the poor established right here in Leviticus 1.
Grounding those figures in their actual socioeconomic reality really changes how we view their lives, doesn't it?
Makes it so real.
It does. However, when you look closely at the specific instructions for that bird offering in Leviticus, the ritual changes in ways that seem peculiar at first glance. I mean, the physical mechanics of dealing with a tiny pigeon are vastly different from dealing with a massive bull.
They really are.
Yeah.
The text provides weirdly meticulous, almost surgical instructions for the priest handling the bird.
Surgical is a good word for it.
Yeah, because with the bull, it is slaughtered, cut into specific pieces, washed and burned. But with the bird, the priest is told to wring its neck, but he is explicitly commanded not to sever the head completely.
Right, don't cut it off.
He squeezes out the blood, removes the crop and the feathers, casting them into the ash heap to the east of the altar.
Okay.
And then he must tear the bird by its wings. But he is strictly forbidden from actually dividing the bird into two halves.
It has to stay connected.
The bird must remain connected. It raises the question of why the text demands such specific manipulation. tearing but never severing for an animal the size of your hand.
It seems overly complicated for a pigeon, right? But the NAA study notes reveal a profound theological dignity embedded in those specific rules.
Dignity, I love that.
Yeah, the overarching requirement of the ola, the burnt offering, is that it is a whole, entirely consumed sacrifice representing complete dedication.
Right.
When you process a large bull, you have to cut it into pieces just to manage it on the altar, and those pieces still represent a massive, substantial offering.
Right. A single leg of a bull is huge.
Exactly. But a pigeon is incredibly small. If a priest were to chop a small bird into pieces, it would practically vanish into the firewood.
Oh, wow.
By instructing the priest to wring the neck without severing the head and tear the wings to open it up for the fire without splitting it in two, the ritual artificially expands the physical presence of the bird.
So it's like they're fanning it out. It compensates for the poverty of the offerer.
Yes, precisely.
By keeping the tiny bird as physically intact as possible, it maintains its visual and symbolic integrity as a whole burnt offering. Even though the actual mass of the animal is minuscule compared to a rich man's prize bull, keeping the bird whole ensures that it still fully qualifies as a complete sacrifice,
Generating that exact same pleasing aroma.
generating the same pleasing aroma. The intention of the poor person and the theological weight of their offering are treated with the exact same dignity and respect as the wealthy landowner.
They aren't treated like second-class citizens at the altar.
Not at all. The size of the asset changes based on what you can afford, but the spiritual result, that total expiation and propitiation, is identical for both people.
The text just goes out of its way to ensure the poor man's offering isn't treated like an afterthought.
It's beautiful, really.
It is. Synthesizing all of this, Leviticus 1 transforms from this, archaic, bloody manual into a highly sophisticated blueprint for Karav for drawing near. It demands a serious, visceral reckoning with the actual cost of human failing, requiring total dedication symbolized by that entirely consumed offering. Yet simultaneously, it weaves a beautiful net of economic grace.
It ensures that the poorest among them have the exact same access to divine peace as the richest. It is a stunning balance of demanding absolute dedication while providing absolute accessibility. You cannot buy your way into a better standing, and you cannot be too poor to participate.
Right.
We have covered the logistical terror of the timeline, the heavy psychology of transferring guilt, and the beautiful dignity of the poor man's bird. But as we wrap up our analysis of these ancient texts, I know you always find a way to connect these historical realities to our modern lives with a final thought for us to mull over.
I do try. And exploring the sheer physicality of Leviticus raises a challenging question about how we practice spirituality today.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, in our modern world, we largely treat connection with the divine, or even just the pursuit of inner peace, as something entirely internal.
Very private.
Yeah,
Very.
right. It happens quietly in our minds or our hearts, and we generally expect it to be completely free of physical cost. But looking at the intense relief these ancient people sought, we have to ask what we might be losing by no longer having a physical, costly action attached to our search for peace.
Mm-hmm.
Have we perhaps lost the profound psychological release that an ancient person experienced when they stood before an altar, felt the heavy cost of their actions leave their hands, and watched their guilt literally and visibly turn into smoke and drift away?
Wow. We traded the messy, visceral reality of the altar for a clean, internal monologue, but in doing so, maybe we lost the profound psychological closure of watching the obstacle actually burn away.
Exactly.
That is a brilliant, heavy question to leave you with today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We hope exploring the smoke, the cost, and the grace of this ancient text provided you with some unexpected clarity. And as we formally sign off, I want to end exactly as we began, by declaring that God blesses all the listeners. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you on the next deep dive.